Thank you all for attending the CRC seminar series edition. The topic is Authenticity in the Presence of Leakage and Faults by Dr. Francesco Berti from Bar-Ilan University in Israel. Francesco Berti is currently a postdoctoral fellow at the Bar-Ilan University. He's a member of the CELESIS Secure Electronic Systems and ENIX Emerging Nanoscale Integrated Circuits and Systems Labs and the Center for Applied Research in Cryptography and Cybersecurity. He works on leakage-resilient cryptography. He received his PhD from UC Louvain in Belgium, where I was lucky to have been working as a colleague with him. And he worked as a postdoc at TU Darmstadt in Germany. So, Francesco, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kashif, for your nice presentation. I will talk about how we can define and provide authenticity when our adversary can have physical access of the devices doing the cryptographic computations, so they can see what is happening, or they can even actively modify the computation. Wait. So, for scenario, we can think a scenario where we have authenticity. For example, the boot upload. We have our device, which is a PC, who wants to charge some programs which are on a USB key or on a non-volatile memory, and we want to load this program. Or we can be interested not only in authenticity but also in privacy. For example, we have the case of a medical exam where there is the hospital which wants to send the results to a patient. But there are adversaries who can see these interactions, and they can try to modify the program uploaded, or they are also curious about what is the result of the exams. Maybe an insurance company who wants to see, oh, now this guy is no more healthy, so I want no more to insure him. So the solution is, for example, to use symmetric the solution is to use cryptography. It may also, in our case, we only talk about symmetric cryptography, which means that both users share a key which is the same. It may also be done with asymmetric crypto, but in our case, we consider symmetric crypto because it has many advantages. Among the first, which is that it is much faster. For authenticity, the symmetric primitive is MAC, a message authentication code. So the chip, the non-volatile memory, with a cryptographic algorithm, provides a tag to the program, which is broadcasted to the device, who verify if the tag is if this transmission is genuine or not. Instead, in the second case, we want to authenticate the encryption. So the hospital, which takes the medical exams, it encrypts, obtaining a ciphertext, which is sent to the patient, who decrypts the medical exam, and decrypting, it can be sure that these results comes from the hospital and not from other random guys. But so there is our adversary, which is in the middle, and this is this tag along with the program. In the first case, we are not interested that the program is private because it may be publicly available. While in the second case, the ciphertext, the adversary only sees the ciphertext. But the adversary may also have physical access to the situation where to the devices which are performing the cryptographic computations, and she may try to interact with this device either in a passive way or in an active way. We will discuss after. For example, you can measure the power consumption. And here we have a leakage trace, which seems at first, which gives no information. But if you remember, if you see that how is the that the shape of the power consumption is different if the key bit processed is 1 or 0, you can easily read the key. So leakage and fault can give information, and they are hard to model and difficult to protect. But it is a real problem. In my talk, my objective is to give a theoretical results. So we want to give security definitions, what we aim for, and also we want to model leakage and at the end faults. And also we have a practical objective to design secure message authentication codes and secure authenticated encryption schemes. In my talk, I will start talking a bit more about the problem. Then I will give some background, and I will start how we model leakage. Then I will define what we aim for message authentication code, what are our security goals, and how we can reach them. The same, we will talk about authenticated encryption for security definition, what security we aim for, and what we want to. For authenticated encryption, we only talk about integrity definition. We do not care in this talk about privacy. It is a problem, privacy with fault, in presence of leakage and faults, but it's not a topic. And I will start, and at the end, I will talk a bit about faults, and I will start only giving the security definition for Mac and some Mac construction which achieves this security definition. If you have any question, you are free to stop me and I will answer. I start explaining what is the leakage. In practice, all cryptographic computations are performed by electronic devices. Thus, an adversary can take some measurement on this electronic device. He can measure the power consumption, the instantaneous power consumption of the device, the time that the device takes to perform a cryptographic computation. And since we are doing with chip, there are electrons moving, and so we have an electromagnetic radiation via Maxwell law. These three are the so-called side channels, are examples of side channels. In the literature, there are also previous case acoustic channel, but this is particular. But so these are, because it is a physical device, we can measure physical quantities. And as I explained before, these side channels may give useful information to the adversaries. Against side channels, there are different types of countermeasures, which we can see at different levels. We have at the hardware level, at the algorithmic level, and at the mode level. At the hardware level, the idea is, okay, we want to reduce the noise leakage. The idea is we want to reduce the information that the adversary, what we can add the noise, we can reduce what the adversary can measure. At algorithmic, for example, we can amplify this hardware countermeasure. For example, instead of using the key, we share the key in many shares, and so we amplify this because the adversary not only has now to obtain a single key, a single value, but he needs to recover. She needs to recover many different values, which is more difficult. And there is the mode level, where we want to design schemes which are inherently more secure. I will talk a bit after, but I want to explain you that hardware and algorithmic countermeasures are very expensive. For example, there is this paper where it is proved that it is hundreds times slower using a well-protected block cipher instead of a not protected block cipher. Our work is at the mode level. And I want to give you now a brief idea about what are the problems about the mode level countermeasure. First, for sure, we need to protect the key because we know that all the security is on the key. The algorithm, the cryptographic algorithm is known. We are using as a block cipher, for example, AES. Everyone knows AES, and the only security is that our key is secure. But we do not only to protect the key. For example, consider this simple message authentication code. where we compute a tag. In verification, as many message authentication code, what we can do is simply to recompute the correct tag for the message, and then check if this correct tag, tilde is equal to the tag provided by the adversary. But if via a channel attack, we are able to recover tilde, now we are able to forge because, m2 is not valid. Now I know m tilde, so m tilde, it will be a forgery. Or for example, if we take an authentication encryption, this is OCP, clearly the key must be protected, but it has been proved in one of my papers that also these masks, which are delta 1, delta 2, knowing them, it's enough to forge or break confidentiality. Here I put a bibliographic mention to the papers. At the end, you will find the bibliography. Don't worry about this. The idea of mode-level countermeasures is to provide schemes that are inherently secure against such attacks. For example, we can avoid to recompute the tag in verification, or also we want to use less the key, not every time the key. Here we use, in OCB, we use a lot of time the key. And we can also, to avoid to have this partial information, which if leaked, can break everything. Now we will talk. I've just given an intuitive idea of what are the problems, but we also need to have definition, to have good definition. And I start with the well-known authenticated encryption security definition, where we have a real world and an ideal world, and our adversary either interacts with the ideal world, where he receives something which gives always random, which is the ideal encryption algorithm, and always invalid, which is the ideal decryption algorithm, or with the real world, where the adversary is interacting with a real encryption algorithm and a real decryption algorithm. We want, when there is no leakage, that the adversary is not able to distinguish the ideal world from the real world. This model where there is no leakage, we will call the black box model. But if we add leakage, the natural idea, we add in both worlds leakage. And the real world is very easy. Now the adversary, she can also measure the encryption algorithm and the decryption algorithm when they are performed. But the problem is, in the ideal world, how can we model, how can we give the adversary the ideal leakage of an ideal computation? By the way, when an algorithm leaks, I will use an L to denote this. So you see NKL, DECL. Our solution is that for integrity, as we will see after, there are other ways to define security, which do not consider this ideal or real paradigm. And in this way, we completely avoid the problem of this ideal leakage. Now, I will give a very simple overview about some cryptographic primitives which I need. First, I will talk about the function. They are used to compress a function, to compress a string. We have a message which has any size of input, and it is hashed and compressed in a string which usually it is 128 or 256 bits. What we want that the hash function is collision resistant, which means that it is difficult to find two different messages such that their hash is the same. Their hash is the same. And also, we want that they are range-oriented pre-image resistant, which means if I give a random age, which is picked uniformly at random from the output space, it is difficult to find a message M, which is a pre-image for this age. I know that for security definition, we need to key hash function for theoretical reason, but the key is public. In our talk from now, we will omit the key of the hash function, and we will forget about this. But for security definition, we need that they are keyed. in all my talk, I only need these two properties of a function. Collision resistant is a well-known property. Range-oriented pre-image resistance is one type of pre-image resistant definition. There are others. There are papers which talks about this, but in this talk we don't need this definition. So I do not want to keep them. Then I will talk about the second component, which is Twitter block cipher. And block cipher. A block cipher takes as input a block, which is a string of n bit. There is a key, which is a string of key bits. Key may be equal or n, or it may be bigger, or in some cases it can be even shorter. And we output a string which has the same size as the block. Twitter block cipher. They are block cipher where there is an additional input, which is called the tweak, which is added for flexibility. As you may see in some cases, also in this talk, it is much easier to use Twitter block cipher because you have an additional input which can give, which is really much more flexible. Block cipher and Twitter block cipher are permutations, so there exists an inverse, which will be clear. For the security definition, we want that they are pseudo-random permutation, which means that the output of F is indistinguishable from the output of an ideal counterpart, which for a block cipher is a random permutation. Strong pseudo-random permutation means that it is PRP even if the adversary has access to the inverse of this block cipher, block cipher, or of this ideal permutation, of this random permutation. Now we can start talking about how we can model leakage. And I would like to start not modeling leakage, but giving an idea how we implement stuff against H attacks, which we have the so-called level implementation, where the idea is, since there are many different calls to a primitive in a cryptographic algorithm, we use many calls to block cipher, to block cipher, some calls to hash function, and we may have two ideas. Either we protect very strongly, with no protection, and we denote with white, or with strong protection, and we color them in gray. Weak protected are faster, much faster, as I explained before, and we should use as much as possible. While strongly protected, they are very slow, and we should use as little as possible. And also, what the idea is that we put in green the input and in orange the ephemeral values, which are values which are used during the computation, and after they are no more leaked, they are no more used, and in red the key of the strongly protected computation. Note that this X, tweak, and Y, it can be also green. It depends how the block cipher is used. It depends if X is the input or it is already an output of a previous computation. The second observation is that we have this, when we strongly protect the block cipher, usually we aim to strongly protect the key, not the input and the output. From this idea, we arrive to this unbounded leakage model, which says, okay, all inputs and outputs of every primitive are leaked. And also, we leak the key of the not protected primitive. So again, using our legend, it means that for strongly protected, for a Twitter block cipher, we will leak the input, the output, and the tweak. When it is not protected at all, we leak not only as before input, output, and the tweak, but also the key. So the leakage function, especially for weakly protected, if you know the key, you know the input, you can also compute the output. There is no more that you can obtain via leakage. And for strongly protected, we need after to model the leakage for that, but at least we have a leakage function which is very easy to describe. In particular, it means that all the green and the orange values are leaked. What means this strongly and weakly protected in practice? Strongly protected, we can see for a model for tweakable block cipher with high order masking, and we should use them many times with the same key, but few times per execution. And they should be resistant to differential power analysis, which are attacks where the adversary is able to have many traces for the same key. Imagine the master key of your authenticated encryption scheme, which is used millions of times to encrypt millions of different messages, and you use every time. While we have weakly protected primitive, which should be used a few times with the same key because they are not resistant, again, when they are supposed only to withstand attack where the adversary, as you call them SPA, where the adversary has only few different leakage traces per key. But they should be used many times for execution. And this weakly protected component reasonable models tweakable block cipher as function with no masking or really little masking. Now we want to model. Sorry, I saw something in chat. Sorry, yeah, nothing there. Now I want to model strongly protected component, and we have leak-free component, the strongly protected, and we have two models. The leak-free model, which means nothing useful from leakage. So the key remains secret and the output is pseudo-random. This reasonable models block cipher to tweakable block cipher with high order masking. But we also, in some cases, we also can lower this hypothesis. Clearly, the leak-free hypothesis is very strong, which says it's hard to predict a new couple input-output. So we have my adversary who has access to an oracle to model leakage. And in fact, for this oracle, the adversary is able to choose the key. And in this way, we model that the adversary can profile the leakage trace. He can try to understand how the leakage trace is modified when you change the key and so on. And then the adversary asks to F, and he receives not only the output, but also the leakage, also when he does this for the inverse. And his goal is to output a triple tweak input output, which is fresh and valid. We conjecture that it may be related to key recovery. We don't see how you should do this for a tweakable block cipher, except if you recover the key, but this is still an open problem. Now I've given how we model leakage, and then we started talking about MECs. MECs are to protect data integrity. And what happens with leakage? I remember that a MEC is used to authenticate a message, and it is a triple, which is we have a key generation algorithm, which generates a new key, a tag generation algorithm, which takes as input a message and outputs a tag, and a verification algorithm, which takes as input a couple message tag and outputs either valid or invalid. For security, it's difficult for an adversary to provide a couple message star tag star, which is fresh. So we have never obtained tag star as a tag when we ask to tag m star, and valid, which means that the verification algorithm says this is valid. Importantly, in the black box model, as you see, this is the definition in the black box model. If an adversary can do Q verification query, then its success probability is not improved more than a factor. We will see. Now I will start with max security definition. How can we modify this security definition with leakage? In the black box, we want that for the adversary it's difficult to find a present valid couple message tag, even if my adversary is able to ask the tag for messages of his choice, and also the verification of couple message tag of her choice. And we don't want that she's able to output this new couple and star to star. But we want also that she's not able to do this, even if she can model the leakage. It usually looked at for the leakage queries, the adversary chooses the key and also the inputs she wants. She has access to the leakage of the tag generation oracle, and in this case we have unforgeability with leakage. And in addition, even if she has access to the leakage of the verification algorithm, which in this case we call a strong unforgeability with leakage. If you remember, in one of the first slides, I've talked about this verification algorithm where it recomputes the right tag tilde and then checks if it is equal to T. Clearly, leaking tilde, it's a problem because this is not forged. So this means that with leakage, unforgeability with leakage does not imply strong unforgeability with leakage, which is the contrary to what happens in the black box model. Now, I start explaining a bit about showing something about the well-known CBC MAC. We have the first block of the message, which is the input of the block cipher. Then you obtain. Then it is XORed. The output is always the second message block, and we go on. And at the end, we obtain the tag. This MAC is good only for fixed length message, technical, but think about this. In particular, note that every time we have the input of the block cipher, if F is AES, the input, every block is 128-bit. So we have to divide our message in many sub-messages. Each of them is 128-bit long. So we need to use the key, the number of bits divided 28 times. And also yi and zi must not be known by the adversary, because otherwise we could have some theoretical problem. We can forge knowing yi and zi. Now, the first solution to the problem of having leakage is this hashed and block cipher. And we hash the message, and then the hash is the input of a block cipher where we use the key and we obtain the tag. Note that here the hash is 128-bit, but the message can have any length. So in this case, we use the key only once for the tweaker block cipher, and not many times per execution. It can be proved that if H is collision resistant and F is a pseudo-random permutation, and it is modeled as leak-free, it is unforgeability with leakage in the unbounded leakage model. But again, we have the problem of leakage in verification. And if we consider this verification where we recompute the real tag, now this is the first time that we're using the unbounded leakage model. I can explain here also now. M is an input, so it is in green. H is not an input, but since it is computed with a public function on the input, we color also in green because the adversary can recover. While tilde2, since it is an ephemeral value because it's computed by the adversary during, it's computed by the algorithm during the verification, we color it in orange. But remember that all orange values are leaked. For the unbounded leakage model, we can see as an output. And the problem is that this correct tag can be computed and leaked. In particular, we have also the problem of protecting also the comparison tilde2 and the attack which allows us to recover tilde2. So the forgery is M1 tilde2. So the idea is, okay, do we have to really protect a lot the comparison to tilde2? No, because we can have a new solution, which is doing a check without recomputing tilde2. And the idea is, instead of recomputing tilde2, we inverse to, because to is because F is a block cipher, so it is a permutation, so there exists the inverse. Now we have the inverse of tau, which is h tilde, and we check if this h tilde is equal to the hash of the message. That is, in HBC, in verification, we say, this tag tau that you have provided me is not the correct tag, because the correct tag is tilde tau, which is different. We say, okay, this tag tau is not correct because it's the correct tag for the digest h tilde, which is different from the digest of your message, which is h. Now, I would like to explain, to give you the idea of the security proof in the leak-free model. And we start considering, suppose that M tau is a forgery, and we consider the digest of H. H we may have obtained H in a previous tag generation query on input M prime. So H is equal H prime, but in this case we found a collision because H of M is equal H of M prime. Or H prime, or H is H tilde prime, because we have a previous verification query on input M prime to prime, and we have inversed to prime, and we have found H tilde prime. But since H tilde prime is random, since F is a strong pseudo-random permutation, and we model this as a leak-free, we obtain that we have found a preimage for a random. So we have broken range-oriented preimage resistance of F. Or H is fresh. In this case, what is the probability that F of H is equal to? Since it is a pseudo-random permutation, it is negligible. We have some problem. One is that the collision resistance, because if the input is 128 bits, we can only have, due to the well-known Berti paradox, only 64 bits of security, which may be a problem. So the idea is, okay, we are in the previous situation, we have used a block cipher. Why not to use a tweakable block cipher, where the idea is to use half of the hash as input and half of the hash as a tweak. So as you see, the input, we split the hash in U, V, and we use U as input and V as a tweak. And in verification, we inverse tau, and we have already computed the hash of N, so we know the tweak, which is V, and then we check if U tilde is equal to U. The proof is the same, changing some little technical stuff. But okay, we have proved that HPC, its security in the leak-free model. Is it necessary to model the tweakable block cipher as leak-free? No, we can also model this as strongly unpredictable with leakage. And to do this, we need this is strong unpredictable in the unbounded leakage model. Sorry, here there's a typo, is S-UNFL. But we need, for a technical reason, to model the hash not as a collision resistant and preimage or range-oriented preimage resistant, but as a random oracle, because we need to keep track of the queries to this random oracle. The random oracle hypothesis can be removed, but with a complex theoretical assumption. But there is another solution to remove the random oracle hypothesis, and the idea is to use the hash only as a tweak. And we use a fixed input for the block cipher. And here, as you can see, this is as proposed at AsiaCrypt 21. And here we use as a fixed input 0n for simplicity. And the hash is only the tweak. And if we use a tweakable block cipher with good tweaks, we have good security. The idea is that x tilde, if it is different from 0n, it gives no information, because you cannot reuse in a different verification query to forge, because no, it must be equal to 0n. Otherwise, it's useless. And clearly, this is all in the unbounded leakage model. I will give you the security proof. Consider M2 forgery, and we consider the digest. Either H is equal H prime of a previous type generation query on input M prime, and in this case we have found a collision for the hash function, or H 0n2 is a valid prediction for F. So the security, as you see, it's really, really easy with a little trick to not to use a factor of QV plus 1 also for epsilon collision resistant. We have really, really a nice and easy proof. Now we have talked about next. We want also now we want to talk. We would like to go to talk about authenticated encryption. And authenticated encryption wants to give not only integrity but also privacy. Now we talk about leakage. The authenticated encryption wants to send a message in a private and authentic way. An authenticated encryption is a triple a key generation algorithm, an encryption algorithm which takes as input the message, maybe the nonce and associated data, and outputs a ciphertext and a tag, or the tag can be in the ciphertext, it depends. And the decryption algorithm which takes as input the ciphertext and outputs the message on which it is being encrypted, or say no, it is invalid. We want that it is correct, so the decryption of an encryption is the identity. But okay, security we have as in the black box model, we have this real and ideal world. In the real world, the adversary interacts with an encryption and the decryption oracle. In the ideal world, with an ideal encryption oracle, which always outputs random, and an ideal decryption oracle, which always outputs invalid. And we want that these two worlds are indistinguishable. Now, we want that it is leakage resistant. We want leakage resistant authenticated encryption. So we have many objectives. First, for efficiency, we still need to have something reasonably efficient. We want to avoid to use many times strongly protected components, because if we use the TBC protected, which I showed you before, we have something which is really, really much more slower. And for example, we can use a leakage resilient stream cipher, which I will show in 2 slides. And an example which has been introduced at CCS 15 by Pereira, Stondelt, and Vivek. And also we want some security, so we will have authenticated encryption security in the black box. We want still to have a black box authenticated encryption. We want an integrity definition with leakage, and we want also a confidentiality definition with leakage. It is still important that we have this confidentiality definition with leakage, but and all the schemes I will show you, they have this security, but it's not the topic of our talk. So we will, from now on, we will forget this confidentiality with leakage, because we are only interested in integrity. But remember that it's also important to have something which is not only which does not only provide integrity, but also confidentiality in presence of leakage. Before I start with a well-known encryption algorithm, which is the counter. And as you see, the message is divided in blocks of fixed size. So the key is used many times, and then we know that there are these nice composition results, which say that encryption by MAC is good. There's some caveats, but okay. But here, if we compose CTR with CBC, you see how many times we are using the same key. And only if we consider only that we need only to protect the key, it will be so expensive. So we have, for encryption, the idea is rekeying, which means that we want to change the key during the encryption, and also we want to use the master key only once. And all the other keys, since they will not very well protected when used, we would like to use as little as possible. In this case, only 2 times. The idea is to create a stream of random bits to sort the message and to refresh the key. So we have PSP, we take a random input, then we generate the first ephemeral key, which is rekeyed with PA, which is a public constant, obtaining the second ephemeral key. And also we use a key 1 with a public constant to have Y1, which is a random block of 128 bits, which is XOR to the ciphertext, and so on. In particular, you know that since we use only once the master key with the strongly protected component, so the cost is not so much lower, but it reasonably gives a good confidentiality property in presence of leakage. Here now I wanted to discuss authenticating encryption security in presence of leakage. Clear the black box says that it is very similar to the one for Mac, which says it is difficult for an adversary having access to encryption and decryption oracle to provide a couple input nonce associated data in ciphertext, which is fresh and bad. But since there is leakage, even if you can model the leakage, as usual, model the leakage means that the adversary can choose the key to understand how the leakage trace is affected by changing the key. And also, she can repeat the nonce because we do not want that the nonce is used only once. We can remove this hypothesis, but we want this also because it's better to have nonce misuse. Or clearly, she is also able to receive the leakage of the encryption oracle. In this case, we have ciphertext integrity with misuse and leakage, CML, and also the leakage of the decryption oracle, which we call CML2. As usual, for the same reasons, CML2 does not imply CML, which is the contrary of the black box. The first algorithm, which I will present you, is EDT, where we create the first ephemeral key from the nonce. Then we encrypt with PSV. Then we digest the ciphertext and the nonce. Then we tag this hash with HBC. So the ciphertext will be C1, all the ciphertext obtained by PSV appended with the tag. The advantage in verification, you can verify if the tag is the good tag for the ciphertext and the nonce, and then decrypt. Note that we are using tweakable block cipher with 1-bit tweak because it is important that the key generation call and the tag call of the strongly protected tweakable block cipher you cannot use the output of one as to have information about the output of the second, because key 0 is obtained and so on. For verification, we use the HBC2 techniques for verification, and it is CML2, but it is no more misuse resistant. And leakage in verification decryption gives no problem. If we want to have better property, there is tweakable EDT, where if you see we have a variant of PSV, which is more complex. We are using tweakable block cipher, but the idea is the same. And all it is with a tweakable block cipher, it is CML2, and we have HTBC. It's all with tweakable block cipher because the hash function you can do using the Rose construction with TBC. The idea, and it is beyond border secure, which is a nice property to have. And also we can have this. We can have spook, where it is a kind of TDT, where the sponge, when we use the sponge instead of PSV and the hash function. If you remember, this is TDT, and here we have spook, where you see again we create the first ephemeral key, which is B. Then we absorb the associated data. Then we produce with the duplex, we produce the ciphertext, producing a stream of random bits, and producing this ciphertext, we also hash this ciphertext in a certain way. And at the end, we we have HTBC, where a part of where UV can be seen at the hash of the ciphertext, and we obtain the tag. And again, we use in decryption the inversion of E to verify the tag. There are additional construction, which for simplicity I want to talk to you about, which is DT and DTE2, where we obtain misuse resistance. We can have misuse resistant and CCAML2, which is a very, very strong confidentiality definition for in presence of leakage for confidentiality. Or, as we have seen, all these constructions use TWI codes to strongly protected block cipher, but it is possible to have ciphertext integrity with misuse and leakage using a single query to a strongly protected tweakable block cipher. Now, I will try to talk about the last topic, which is faults, and to introduce this topic also because you may see that some of the ideas of which we have used before, they can be used also in presence of faults. And so I started talking about faults, which means that the adversary can physically influence what the algorithm is computing, modifying some bits of the internal state of the device. She can flip some bits, she can fix some bits to fixed values, or then she may only be able to inject one fault per execution or many faults, or she can also affect one bit or many bits at the same time with a single fault. Note that we need some property, we need some security also against fault attacks, because if the adversary is able to set one bit of the key to 0, she can easily recover this key bit. There are some results in the literature. So we still need some fault protection for the key and so on. Now, we would like to give a security definition. So we know that black box security definition for Max. We want that the adversary is able to access, even if she has access to the MAC algorithm. She's not able to produce a fresh and valid couple message stamp. But what means fresh? Because, for example, the adversary can, during a tag generation query, she can replace every time M prime is used with N. Is this M2 fresh? This is a question. What means valid? If, for example, we force the verification query to say always valid, whatever it is done, is this something which cryptography can solve? Quickly after. Similarly to the unbounded leakage model, we have this atomic model where we divide the computation into atoms. So, for example, this is the verification of LRMAC1. We have as first atom the computation of the hash function, as the second atom the TBC, as the third atom the quality check. The adversary can either inject faults between the atoms or inside the atoms. Between the atoms are the output of one atom, which is sent as input to another atom. In this atomic model, we assume that the adversary can only insert faults between atoms and not when there is the master key. Okay. For this, there are some ideas about sponge.
Sorry, Francesco, just to for the other members of the audience, maybe if you can read the question and then
okay.
Yeah.
Hello. So I've been asked. For Spook, there are. I go back to Spook. So it will take some. Okay, for Spook. Here there are two TBC codes which prevents attacks against leakage. Any ideas how to prevent such attacks for regular sponges? Is there a way to do something without the TBC? So yes, there is a way. this, for example, eyes up by the Browning and Manning gives this. The point is that you cannot use this inversion trick. For example, in eyes up, when there is the verification, they recompute the tag, say that they arrive here. Do you see my mouse? Do you see or not the mouse?
Yeah.
Okay. They arrive here, and now you can use this to do decryption easily. It's easy to do this to use to recompute the decryption, and you are decrypting. You only switch the place of C and M, and you arrive here. Now you have UV. Okay, this is the hash, and you have U prime V prime. You can even from in a black box model use UV as a tag, because these are random bits and you should not be able to inverse because these bits you do not know, so you cannot inverse. What they do, since it is a problem to compare UV with the UV you obtain decryption, because you can leak and then you can change them easily. Their idea is to use a sponge with rate 1, which means that here, when we absorb a single bit, so very, very slow, because here usually it is 64 bits, 128 bits, and to do the comparison with the output of the sponge. The problem is that you cannot have this unbounded leakage model, so you must assume that in every moment of the sponge, not everything is leaked. If you know at any moment the complete state of the sponge, you are doomed in verification. So there is this problem, and okay, see another question. Maybe since I have still 5 minutes of the presentation, maybe it's better if I finish the presentation, then I answer, if it's not a problem. Is it okay? Because I saw another question and so on. Is it okay?
Yeah.
So yes, it is possible, but for the first question, yes, it is possible, but you need additional hypothesis, and still for a sponge, you are in this random permutation model where the P is an ideal permutation. So there are still some problems. I was here, which means valid. Okay, the atoms we were. So the adversary can insert faults only between atoms and not in the master key. So all these faults we do not allow. And also we want that the adversary must choose the faults at the start of the computation. She cannot see the leakage trace and then insert faults, seeing what it is, because it is being computed, because we believe that it is too difficult to, since computations are fast anyway, it is too difficult to see the leakage trace, then decide and physically move the faults, the laser injection. So the advantage is to reduce the security of the whole computation to single atoms. And also we have an advantage that even if the key of an atom are public and deterministic, we can allow the adversary to put faults there for setting faults and also for differential. That is, for the hash function, since M is known and the adversary can influence H, we can also allow the adversary to set a fault in directly in H. So for the hash function, we need no protection, which is great because the hash function will take the P, will do a very big computation. So not protecting, it is wonderful. For an adversary, the security definition I would like to give you is, okay, now we want the adversary can inject faults, we model faults as an additional input, and first we say that in a MEC query, if every time we should have used a message, we have replaced it with another message, now this is no more fresh. We do not want, okay, you want me to compute the tag for M, you replace the last bit, and then you force this to be equal to 0. No, this is not acceptable. Invalid, we do not allow false in challenge verification, because if you broke with false the verification algorithm and says everything is valid, we cannot have protection. So for this, we have strong affordability with leakage and false, and we use a suffix to denote if the faults are in tag generation, verification, or in. First, I would like to show that LRMAP1, which I proposed to you before, is strong affordability with if there are faults in verification. Again, if there is a forgery, if A is equal to H prime, within a previous tag generation query, we have a tag collision. Otherwise, we have still a valid prediction. If you see, it is the same proof of strong affordability with leakage in both tag generation and verification. So the idea is unbounded number of type and faults in verification between the atoms and in the hash function, and also in the comparison, do not give any advantage to the adversary. So it's wonderful because we have reduced the security of the pool scheme with faults and leakage to the security of the tweakable block cipher, which is great because it is much shorter. We still have the problem of tag generation because the idea is, okay, what I can do, I compute H prime, myself, the H of and message M prime, and when I ask a MAC query on input M, since I know H of M, I can replace H with H prime, and then I obtain tau. And M prime tau is a valid forgery because I obtain tau in reality from H prime. And prime tau is fresh, but it's also difficult to control what H prime the adversary knows as a preimage. Also, the random oracle, I believe, is not a good solution here because it will explode everything. And also, you will consider not a invalid stuff which should be valid. Not fresh stuff which should be considered fresh. The solution is to concatenate typical block cipher calls. And we suppose that it is difficult to insert faults in the output of the first, which is also the key of the second. We need some additional hypotheses, and we can afford one fault per execution in tag generation, which is not wonderful, but it's still something. To conclude, our model has many advantages. First, leakage functions are easy to describe. They identify clearly what must be protected. For the leak-free, we can reduce the security of the whole scheme to a black box property and a leakage assumption on the strong protected component, where strong unpredictability has the same advantage, but the definition, which is weaker, is also verifiable in practice and allows graceful degradation. Moreover, the faults are easy to describe. Still, this is not the solution for everything. We have the problem of the real valuation of strong forgeability with leakage. What is the link against key recovery attack? Also, is it possible to have from strong unpredictability confidentiality? Should we give some leakage resilience? We want also to have something fault resilience, and what is the relation between fault resilience and leakage resilience? We would like also to remove the random oracle hypothesis in the proof of HBC from strong affordability. You see, it's not so fundamental, the random oracle. We should also do something for faults and authenticated encryption. We want also to have a kind of strong affordability with leakage definition, but instead of strong affordability with leakage, strong affordability for faults. For typical block cipher, this definition is not easy, and it should be discussed. These are some of open problems. There are other open problems. To conclude, I hope that I have shown and I have proved you that authenticity is possible even in the presence of leakage with simple assumptions, and also for faults. The definition for integrity are very natural, and also they can be achieved. Moreover, we can reduce the security of whole scheme to the leakage security of a single primitive. And we have just started the path for extending our models in presence of faults. I thank you. This has not been able to be done alone, but I had great co-authors. You can see them. This is the bibliography, and I'm open to questions, and I will answer to the first from Rogerio. Can you comment on the computational complexity and overhead of such countermeasures? How they compare to related approaches? These countermeasures are not, the overhead are not of the countermeasure presented here. They have not so many overhead. For example, if we consider here, okay, this is Alarmac 1. Here I am talking about faults, but for example, here for this, the overhead is the same overhead with respect when we replace a normal two-cable block cipher with a strongly protected two-cable block cipher in presence of leakage. So say that you mask with order 10 or 15. The overhead is big, but anyway, when you want security in presence of leakage, you need to protect this. You need to use masking because this scheme should be masked always. You cannot not mask this scheme. So I think these are the most efficient. ISAP is also, then it depends if two-cable block cipher are better or not better than more or less efficient than permutation. Here, as you have seen many times, the ability to inverse the two-cable block cipher is used. So here there is a reason to use two-cable block cipher, not permutation, because we want to do the inversion. For permutation, the problem is that even if you take ISAP, I'm not here, I decided about ISAP, which is, the problem is that here, say, when you do this, or when you compute the first ephemeral key, you are using the permutation, you protect the permutation, and this permutation absorb one by one the bits of the nonce, which means that anyway it's low. It depends also on the implementation, it depends also on the security that you want. This should be done with experiments and so on. I saw another. I think I have answered. Okay.
Thank you, Francesco, for the very exciting talk. We keep the floor open for any questions. If anybody has, please put it in the Q&A or in the chat if possible.
Okay.
So if there are no more questions, let us thank the speaker once again virtually. And yeah, thank you, Francesco, once again. Thank you all.
Thank you for having hosted me and for having given me the possibility, the chance to present this. Thank you again for everything. Thank you for your attention.